Hi, my name is Karim Rafa. Welcome to Coffee and Conversation. I'm joined today by D'Angelo Harris, Senior Manager in Digital and Emerging Technologies at Randstad. D'Angelo, thank you so much for coming today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, happy to be here, Karim.
So before we get into the bigger detail of what Randstad's doing and the current state of hiring and recruitment in Singapore, can you tell me a bit more about yourself and what you really do at Randstad?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I help Singapore-based tech companies grow their engineering teams. That could be as junior software engineers, all the way up to CTOs and head of departments.
So Singapore really is the place to be when it comes to tech, digital, and especially emerging technologies. I mean, you've got big giants such as Grab and then smaller ones coming up in the fintech scene, tech scene in general. Is there anything that you're keeping an eye out yourself at the moment, something very interesting that you personally find?
Yeah, so you're right. This is sort of the place to be when it comes to setting up technology-based businesses or non-tech-based businesses. It's very easy to do business here, and it's very easy to attract talent to want to work here and work for these sort of companies. I think one of the trends you're starting to see now is more of these jobs that were kind of outsourced 5 to 10 years ago to cheaper markets, like say India, for instance, are starting to get insourced back into Singapore.
Absolutely. Now, I see that Singapore tends to be very flexible in how it deals with sourcing in-house talent, favoring that over sourcing outsourcing talent from abroad. Can you tell me more about the regulations, the policies that are in place that help Singaporean firms hire Singaporeans as opposed to foreigners?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So obviously work passes are required for foreign talent to get a job here. Singaporeans and PRs don't need these workforce passes. Also, depending on the salary range that you come in at, could be restrictive for foreign talent. Singapore Ministry of Manpower is also preferential to engineers or just talent in general that has graduated from a local university. So that's your NTU, SMU, NUS. Also very preferential to their neighbors in Malaysia. So these are just a few ways that they kind of make it easier for Singaporeans or friendly neighbors of Singaporeans to kind of have first dibs or at least a seat at the table for interviewing for some of these hot jobs coming to the market.
I understand that the requirements when it comes to minimum wages are required for certain EPs or S-passes and so on. But beyond that, how do companies manage to retain employees, be they foreign or locals? In such a fast-moving tech scene as in Singapore, are there any tips?
Yeah, I mean, retention is always an issue where you have a market that's bringing some of the sexiest companies in all of the world to set up here. So how do you keep talent from going online and applying to these exciting jobs or getting poached over by friends that have joined these new companies? It's difficult. I think a lot of companies still sort of struggle with it. I think most businesses sort of factor that into their ultimate game plan when they're onboarding people to realize, look, 2 years, I may lose this guy or lose this gal. What can I sort of ensure to get as much as I can out of them in 2 years and sort of upskill and train others to kind of cover that gap if that happens. For your more senior roles, shares are given as a way to kind of retain you. So, and those are usually paid out after 2 years. So you usually get access to 50% of your shares after the first 2 years, 25% in the third year, and the rest of it in the fourth year. So, and in today's standard, 4 years working for a tech company, most would consider a lifetime already.
Agreed. 4 years does seem to be quite a long time, especially when you have that delayed vesting period for shares. I'm pretty sure that you issue more shares after the first year and so on. Keeps you in for the long haul. You did mention AI and doing a lot in that space. Singapore does have a reputation, so to speak, of having a lag of talent and therefore outsourcing it, which is why the whole EP scene came to really exist and flourish in Singapore. What are the specific sectors that you see are lagging behind in Singapore, and what is Singapore doing to fill those lags?
Yeah, so I think data science and, data science oftentimes sort of includes AI, it includes machine learning. It's sort of a subset of this space. I think this is an area that is still sort of lacking tremendously because it only recently became sexier in this side of the world, right? It wasn't long ago before talent thought to get the cool kind of house with the cool flat and the amazing boyfriend or girlfriend, they needed a job in banking or finance, right? So that mindset is slowly shifting where now they're picking up the books around machine learning and data science and robotics and AI, and they realize they can have those amazing jobs and all those amazing things that come with it by having a job in the tech space. So in the short term, to kind of fill the gap of kind of a lack of Singaporean and PR talent in the data science space, they are looking abroad. They are looking at more mature markets, whether that be the US, whether that would be Europe. And oftentimes, when you're talking with really experienced data scientists, they oftentimes come in at a salary high enough where EP issues and kind of getting them kind of passes is rarely an issue.
That is definitely the shift that brings foreign workers to Singapore in the first place is that faster moving and faster responsibilities are given to younger staff, much more than we see in the West.
Very true.
Does Singapore have any initiatives, so to speak, or government initiatives, sorry, to push young graduates through to specific roles?
Yep. So you have Workforce Singapore and you have Skills Future Singapore. So Skills Future is more about continuous learning, right? Even if you have that job, it still sort of incentivizes you to go back to accredited programs and institutions and re-up and kind of improve yourself in that skill set. And it's highly subsidized. You oftentimes pay nothing. Companies are paid money to incentivize their staff to go through this program. And then Workforce Singapore is more about fairness and equality for local Singaporeans. So their responsibility is to make sure that companies that are setting up here are fair and inclusive of Singaporean talent. Because at the end of the day, their objective is to make sure the Singapore spine, the workforce spine, is Singaporean, which makes sense. As a foreigner myself, I have no issues with that mandate whatsoever.
So for the years to come, do you have any idea on where the demographic shift is going to be it for your friendly neighbors, as you mentioned before, or from the West, or from South America? Where do you see that demographic shift coming from in the coming years?
To be perfectly honest, I see a lot of that talent coming in from Vietnam. I see a lot of that talent coming in from Taiwan, Philippines. I think one of the most interesting sort of emerging markets in the region where we're seeing more and more tech talent flowing in from is actually Myanmar. I don't know if you've ever been to Myanmar, but there's a lot of places in this country that don't even have paved roads. Yet they're picking up tech books and picking up the sharpest back-end languages. They're picking up DevOps, they're picking up AI, they're picking up big data. And more we're seeing kind of Myanmar pushing out some pretty interesting talent. I think they still kind of have a longer way to go than in Singapore, but one of the more mature markets, I would definitely say, is kind of Vietnam, followed by sort of Taiwan, Indonesia, and Philippines.
D'Angelo, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you all for watching. See you soon.